Dunkirk is written and directed by Christopher Nolan, and it's the true story about the evacuation of Dunkirk during World War II, but it's told through fictional people and fictional events during this real-world setting. And throughout the movie, the evacuation of Dunkirk is told through 3 different perspectives: land, sea, and air. And at this time, you see everyone's perspective and mindset of just trying to survive, of getting off Dunkirk and going back home. Now, I'm a huge fan of Christopher Nolan. I've seen every movie that he has made since Batman Begins, and I'm a huge fan of every single one of them. Dark Knight, Dark Knight Rises, Interstellar, Inception, Prestige. I've loved every one of them. Each one of his films has great themes. They have a much deeper context, and of course, every single one of his films is visually stunning. And I feel that Dunkirk fits right into there. Dunkirk is a visually phenomenal film. I saw Dunkirk at the Lincoln Square IMAX in New York City. IMAX 70mm, it is still real and it looked phenomenal. Even from the opening shot of these soldiers just walking through the town of Dunkirk, all these flyers falling onto the ground, it is a beautiful first shot. And seeing all these airplane fights with Tom Hardy on the 6-story screen was beautiful. The cinematography was beautiful in the aerial fights, especially when the camera is detached onto the wing of the airplane and you just see it through its perspective. And 70mm IMAX, it was phenomenal. But I feel like Dunkirk solidifies that Christopher Nolan is an amazing visual storyteller. But then there's more of the other aspect of the movie, which is the script, but I'll get into that later. Another thing that I wasn't really sold on Dunkirk in the beginning, but it really made up for it at the end, was its use of storytelling. As I said before, there are 3 perspectives in the movie: land, ocean, and air. At first, all these storylines are happening and you're just kind of confused of when everything is taking place and how it really relates to each other. And at first, it's kind of irritating because you're trying to latch on to a certain storyline and it's kind of hard to really latch on to that specific storyline. But then in the end of the movie, when everything meshes together, it is so neat. And this is really the Christopher Nolan element in the movie, because besides this element, the movie is kind of basic on a Christopher Nolan story level. Now, I'm not saying that Dunkirk is not emotionally investing or it's not a great story. It is a great historical story and you were definitely rooting for all these people to get off the land of Dunkirk. But compared to Christopher Nolan's other films like Interstellar, Inception, even the end of Dark Knight Rises, you have this feeling of whoa, like you just experienced something and that you're changed by it. The ending of Dunkirk, it didn't really move me in the way that I really wanted it to, and I didn't feel like that I was changed after this. As a movie overall, I wouldn't say that Dunkirk is one of my favorite Christopher Nolan films. It may be visually, but overall I won't say that this was an emotionally moving movie. There's even a moment at the end of the movie, I'm not going to spoil anything, but even though you should know this if you know the evacuation of Dunkirk, there is a moment at the end of the movie where the music swells up. It's supposed to be this big grand moment, everything is going to be great, and the camera is looking at the ocean and what is happening is kind of small in relating to what the music is delivering. I know this is based on history facts, but comparative to what you see versus what the music is feeling, it is kind of ironic, and I'm not gonna lie, it was a little bit funny. But Hans Zimmer does have a great intense score and it works extremely well in many of the other scenes, especially the dogfights with Tom Hardy. And this is one of Christopher Nolan's shorter movies. It's about 1:40, and even though it's not as long as his other 2.5 movies, I think this is the perfect length for this movie. The beginning of the movie, you will put right in the moment of the action and it never lets up. This movie goes by so quickly. There is not a single dull moment in this movie, and I think that is phenomenal. But yeah, as I said, this is not a perfect movie. Visually, it is phenomenal, but story-wise, I feel like it was just kind of basic. But out of everything, I think the worst crime this movie does, which really dragged this movie down for me, I don't know if it was the sound system at the AMC Lincoln Square IMAX, or if it's the movie's fault, because I have heard this at many other accounts, but the dialogue, the audio, I could not hear what the characters are saying. I'm not sure if it was the accent or Christopher Nolan purposefully muffled the dialogue, but there's so many scenes where you just don't know what these characters are saying. And it's fine sometimes, because visually, since Christopher Nolan is such a great storyteller, you can see what is happening. You don't need the dialogue. And the movie doesn't even have that much dialogue to begin with, but when you're invested in scenes that include dialogue and you cannot understand, it just takes me out of the movie, and I was more irritated, if anything, during those scenes. And the actors in the movie, Tom Hardy, Mark Rylance, Kenneth Branagh, even Harry Styles, everyone was good. There was no standout performance, but no one was really bad. Everyone just did a good, decent enough performance. Nothing to really ruin the movie, but nothing to really escalate it. But yeah, Dunkirk is a visually phenomenal movie. It solidifies Christopher Nolan as being a great visual filmmaker. It does have a nice Christopher Nolan element of time, which really makes this movie stand out more than other war movies. The characters are a little bit flat. You don't really know that much about each character, but it kind of makes sense because you don't need to know about these characters in a time of war. And while Dunkirk did look beautiful in 70mm IMAX, the sound really did retract the movie. Even though the sound effects were amazing, the dialogue, you cannot really hear that much. Not sure if it was the accents or a purpose effect, but it really retracted from the movie. But I really did like Dunkirk. Overall, it is not my favorite Christopher Nolan film, but I think visually it is very up there, and I can say that Dunkirk is a great movie. So that's Dunkirk. Have you seen the movie? Have you not seen the movie? Whatever you think, you could put in the comments below and maybe I'll read it, maybe I won't. Thank you as always for watching. If you haven't, you can click my last video right over here, and you can click my upcoming video right over here. Thank you as always for watching. Hope to see you next time.